fight those who do not believe. We turn to Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. We find Muhammad saying, I've been commanded to fight people until they say, La ilaha illallah. Muhammad has been commanded, if you don't say that, if you don't recite the creed as a Muslim, Muhammad is commanded to fight you. So over and over again in the Muslim sources, we find commands to fight the unbelievers. We look around the world, and whether it's in Michigan or in New York or in Arizona or in Texas or in different countries, in Egypt, in Malaysia, Muslims are attacking the unbelievers, and we all say it must just be because of a few radicals who are misrepresenting Islam. Well, it's either that or people are just opening up the Quran and saying, hey, but this isn't about what I want the Quran to say. What does the Quran teach? It teaches me to attack unbelievers.
Even if we say few radicals, and if you say we have more than 1 billion Muslims, how many millions of those radicals that's around the world?
Yeah, and that's very important, because there's no official number about of how many violent Muslims there are, but there have been some studies in certain areas. For instance, they did a study in the UK where they tried to figure out what percentage of Muslims are ready to attack if called upon, and the number tends to be around 15%. So you have 15% of Muslims who are completely westernized. So as far as on the scale, you have 15% of Muslims who are completely westernized. They don't care about Islam at all. They've been thoroughly westernized. They might say they're a Muslim, but it really just means they're cultural Muslims. And then you have about 70%, who really do believe in Islam. They tend to go to the mosque and so on. But basically, they're here in the West, you know, to work, to have jobs, to see their kids go to school and get good lives and so on. That's what they care about. That's what they care about. And then you have around 15% that are ready to kill, and if it came down to it, would commit treachery against their country if there was a conflict. In other words, if they had to decide, hey, I need to follow Islam or I need to follow my country, they will attack their own country. So around 15%. But think about this. If you have more than a billion, now if that holds, in other words, if it's the same percentage around the world, and it tends to be a little more or a little less, so let's say 15%, let's just say 10%, let's go low here. Let's say 10% of Muslims, if they have to decide, are going to side with Islam and will attack even their own country. That's 10% of more than 1 billion. That's about 100 million. It's actually more, because there's about 1.5 billion Muslims in the world. So there are around 150, let's say 150 million Muslims around the world who are ready to slaughter and obliterate all unbelievers in the name of Islam. And yet we do everything we can. We do everything we can to say Islam is peaceful and it doesn't call for violence. And we have to absolutely destroy the Muslim sources and to ignore every clear statement we can find from Muhammad on this issue. So, I mean, just think again, my friends. Fight those who don't believe in Allah. If you want to say that really means fight the oppressors, why didn't the Quran say that? Why didn't the Quran just say fight the oppressors? It already said that. But why does it specifically say fight those who believe not in Allah? If you look at Surah 929 of the Quran, it gives you several different reasons for fighting against people. Not one of those reasons were fighting oppressors or fighting them because they attack you or fighting them because they're oppressing people around the world. The reasons given for fighting against people in Surah 929 are they don't believe in Allah, they don't believe in a future. So if you don't believe in Allah, Muslims are commanded to fight you. If you don't believe in a future judgment, Muslims are commanded to fight you. If you don't prohibit all of the things that have been prohibited by Muhammad, so drinking alcohol or eating pork or anything that Muhammad has commanded, if you don't have the same views, Muslims are commanded to fight you. And finally, if you don't follow Islam, Muslims are commanded to fight you. So they're commanded to fight everyone who disagrees with them on their religious views. And when we see Muslims in the world who actually say, well, the Quran tells me to fight, so whether I want to fight or not, that's what I'm going to do. And that's about 15% of the Muslims in the world. In other words, you have many Muslims here in the United States, they really believe in peace and tolerance, not because they got it from Islam, but because they're raised here in the West. And they really are peaceful. They don't want to kill anyone. But then you have other people who say, you know, look, I don't care whether I like peace. I don't care whether I like tolerance. That's not what the Quran commands me. That's not what the Quran commands me to do. What does the Quran say? Fighting is prescribed for you. Fighting is prescribed for you, and you don't like it. What's the Quran saying there? It's saying some people don't like fighting. Shut up and fight anyway. It's not your choice. Allah has commanded you to fight. Quit whining about it and fight. And so some Muslims actually like that and say, hey, I don't want to go out and kill people. I don't want to go out and kill people in the name of Islam, but that's what my religion tells me. And if I believe in this religion, that's what I have to do. And my friends, we can deny it all we want. Wherever Islam spreads, there's always going to be a group of people who say, I'm going to take this Quran seriously. I'm going to obey its teachings, even if I don't like what it says. I'm going to follow these teachings.
Then the question comes to me, what is the solution? I mean, look at the map of the world. If you go to Pakistan, you'll find killing. Kids are playing volleyball in their playground, they're gone. Yes. You go to Iraq, the same story. Just, there you go. 7 people, and the policeman that is supposedly he is fighting this terrorism, they killed him too, from the government. Then you go in Egypt, the same story. And this is not year after year after year after year. What did we accomplish? That's the question here. And what's the solution for this?
I would say the solution, because as you know, as Christians, we can't just say, hey, nuke Mecca and kill 1 million people. That's not our method as Christians. What we can do as Christians, the first thing we need to do, we need to learn about Islam. Because I am convinced that Islam can only spread through the sword or through complete ignorance. In other words, every convert to Islam I've ever talked to, and I sit down and say, hey, why did you convert to Islam? I get the most absurd reasons I could even think of. And at the same time, I find that the person does not understand Islam, and usually doesn't understand what the person left after converting to Islam. So if the person left Christianity for Islam, the person usually has no clue what Christianity teaches, and the person has no clue what Islam teaches. So I think that the first step, now, you know, we need to do a lot to combat worldwide terrorism, and governments certainly play a role in protecting us. But as far as if we're really going to get this done, if we're really going to get this done in the long run, the first step is for people to know what Islam actually teaches, so that people stop defending it when they know absolutely nothing about it. This would also stop the spread of Islam, because you know, even if we consider the scientific issue, Islam only spreads among people who don't know about Islam. What Muslims do is they adapt Islam and they transform it into whatever the people in an area like. So here in the West, for instance, we like science, we have a high regard for science, and so Islam becomes a religion of science and learning and everything else, and Muslims present it as a scientifically accurate system.
I'm just talking about the common sense itself. Okay, they said they killed, through all of these killings in Iraq, more than 90,000.
Yes.
And we're still in point.
Yes, that's what I mean. I mean, if you think about what we like here in the West, we like science, so Islam suddenly becomes a religion that teaches science. We value women's rights here in the United States. We don't believe it's okay to smack your wife around. And so Islam suddenly becomes a religion that promotes women's rights. And if you go up, you'll find Muslims handing out booklets and pamphlets saying how Islam is the champion of women's rights and Muhammad was the greatest defender of women's rights in history. We also value tolerance and religious freedom and freedom of speech.